afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us for this next installment of our virtual skill session series. Today, we're going to be talking about locking in, leveling up, and twister there, to resiliency. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you our guest presenter today, Nancy Diaz. Nancy Diaz currently works for the California Public Utilities Commission, serving in a variety of roles, wearing different hats, including diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging, equal employment opportunity officer, and environmental and social justice executive. That's a lot of stuff, Nancy. You're too
It's the
busy.
alphabet.
Yeah, exactly. Everything. Her expertise spans human resources, program management, workforce retention, supplier diversity, inclusive marketing, and community empowerment. And she has done extensive work working with youth and STEM programs, receiving numerous awards like the Glenn Diversity Champion Award from the National Society of Black Engineers, Women of Color Rising Star, and Diversity Change Agent Award. And she is a champion for all of you and a friend of Mesa, and a SoCal native. And one of the coolest things about Nancy is that she is my fellow Guatemalan, and so
Chapin,
we are
yes.
few and far between. So it's always a super pride when we get to run into each other and connect through spaces like this. So my fellow Chapina, great to have you here today, Nancy. I turn it over to you, and let's all welcome Nancy.
Thank you, Marvin and Danielle and everybody for joining. Buenas tardes, good afternoon. I am Nancy Diaz. I am delighted to be here with you in this safe space to really kind of share a little bit about how you can lock in and level up. We're going to talk a little bit about some of my experiences. We may get a little bit vulnerable here, so I hope that, this is a safe space for you as well to share your experiences. One of the things to help ground us, I would like for us just to take a deep breath in and breathe out to help us kind of get those nerves or whatever's going on early in the morning. And hopefully you can really engage with this conversation. So if Marvin, if you can please put the presentation up. I don't know if you can all see it. I see a black screen. So I don't know if it's working. There it is. All right. So again, I'm excited. So I am going to start with, first of all, thanking you for being courageous to continue to pursue your higher education on whatever endeavors you're about to embark or embarking. Mesa, specifically STEM students, are definitely a passion of mine. And you'll hear a little bit about through my background, but I actually helped, particularly organizations that I work with, to sponsor the program so that we can build and develop you and be the future talent for all these companies that need it in various sectors. And so we'll talk more as we move forward, but want to really kind of ensure that this is a safe space. Engage through the chat. I hope that you'll be able to engage through the chat. If you're okay sharing your camera, that's great. If not, that's fine, whatever you're comfortable with. Feel free to stop me at any time. But today is number one, be able to share with you some lessons learned from my experience, what I have also seen of things that work and that don't work. And then also, how do you really lock in and level up so you can really succeed and build that resiliency to strengthen yourself and others to really be successful in life. So that's pretty much my two goals today. We're gonna be jumping back and forth. I actually have some videos as well I'll be showing you, and hopefully this will help develop our dialogue. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what we're gonna talk about today. We're gonna talk about that in order for you to lock in and level up, number one, you need to understand what your values are. You need to be self-aware. We also need to ensure we have a discipline within each other, but also how do we turn our challenges and obstacles into strength? And I'm going to give you some tools and strategies that you can help build that resiliency wherever your journey is at today, but also to hopefully help you in the future. And then we're going to reflect on what we've learned. And I always like to provide a call to action, something that you can commit to taking forward for yourself or for others so that you can continue to grow and continue to level up so that you can really be successful in whatever it is that you pursue. And then we'll open it to Q&A. But very engaging. So if you have a question, raise your hand with the icon or go on mute and we can definitely, engage throughout the process. So with that, let's get started. So, ¿quién soy? So, who am I? So, yo soy, like, Marvin shared a little bit, definitely born in Guatemala, but raised here in the US, particularly here in Southern California, and more in particular in South Central LA. So, I'm very proud native of South Central. I graduated from Manual Arts High School. I also, my moral compass is really about empathy and being open and equitable and in bringing those resources to our communities that a lot of times are left behind and are very vulnerable. I'll talk a little bit about my educational background and my journey, but some, personal things about me. Love the Dodgers. I actually played softball when I was in high school, 3 years, pitcher MVP. We did go to our regional champions, and but then obviously, we fell through, but at least, I got to be the city champion as part of my softball experience. I also like sports, and particularly, growing up, we didn't have here in LA really a football team. So during my era of high school, and Green Packers were like hot, and so I was a bandwagon and got part of it. But I still support it. And actually, last year I did my very first NFL experience with the Packers and the Rams at SoFi. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. So if you ever get to go to any sports events like that, it's a great opportunity to just really feel the energy, and especially if you have athletic, background, or even if you just like the teams, it's great energy to re-energize. Personally, I love R&B music. That's what I grew up with, being in South Central. Hip hop, R&B is a big thing, but also salsa. Salsa, merengue are a big, like, music for me. But in particular, Mana. Mana was our, upbringing with, rock en español kind of band. I've seen them in different areas. I've seen them in Nevada. I've seen them in Arizona. I've seen them here in LA. And so I just, saw their last concert, I think last year at the Forum. So just a little bit about me. And I try to use this identity wheel to kind of share a little bit about who I am. At your age, sometimes I didn't disclose as much information because it wasn't that I was embarrassed. I just wasn't confident enough to share with others. And I hope that as you continue to grow and share about who you are and your background, that you're proud of it. One of the things I've had the privilege through my work experience to travel to almost 30 US states I've been to. Outside of the states, I haven't really been as much. That's a future goal of mine to travel more internationally. But we'll talk a little bit more about my work experience and my educational background to kind of help us. But I wanted to give you insights to who am I? I am, and so I'm continuing to grow as a leader and as a community member, but also as a mother. And so we'll share a little bit more as we continue our dialogue. So with that, that's a little bit who I am. And I wanted to just bring to your attention that, like I mentioned at the beginning, having values, as you all know, many of our values come from home, right? It comes from our upbringing. It comes from what we believe in. As you move in your careers or even in your college experiences, values become really important. And they become important because they tend to guide us how we show up in the spaces that we're in. It really helps us also figure out what our boundaries are. How do we want to interact? How do you want to spend your energy? A lot of times when you're in the workplace, it's a whole different experience when you begin working in, let's say, corporate America or in an organization that, are you really feeling safe at work? Can you really be yourself at work? Can you really talk to people about your background and how you contribute, and, how you want to ensure that, you're productive? And so I will talk about my college degree in a little bit. So my college experience in my workplace, I will be discussing in the next couple of slides. So I kind of want to leave that curiosities, but thank you for asking. So go back to the other one, please. The other thing too, I want to let you know is self-awareness is very important. And we have to understand that throughout life, you are going to really have to own your own thoughts, your own emotions, your behaviors. And sometimes, understanding who you really are and where you come from, what values, what was important to you is really what's going to help you get a real sense of direction. And also when you're seeking us help with others, it helps them understand that you are aware of your own decisions, your own experiences, and your own desires. So just wanted to kind of bring these two concepts. But let's get into the what does lock-in mean? Many of you may be aware, but there's a lot of students and a lot of kids now, especially Gen Z, talking about let's lock in. What does lock in mean? lock in means, you seriously have to focus and put all those distractions. You're going to have distractions everywhere, whether it's at school, whether it's at work, whether it's at family, whatever that is. Locking in is really a concept that is really being used by Gen Z, but honestly, we've all used it in one way or the other. You're all in college right now. You may be working professionals. Sometimes you have deadlines to meet. You have to study. You have to submit papers. And so locking in really is how do you discipline yourself to ensure that you are meeting those commitments based on where you want to go, based on your deliverables? It's not just a trend. It could be a trend right now for Gen Z, but it's been around for a long time. But how do you really discipline yourself to make sure that you lock in? Is there a question? Hold on, I want to make sure I'm answering any questions in here. All right, so we'll go out to the next one, the next question. I mean, the next slide. So locking in is about discipline, and this is where I'll tell you a little bit about my educational background. So I graduated from Manual Arts High School. So before I graduated, I was part of this program called similar to yours, MESA, only it was called Academy of Finance. My primary magnet focused on business, and that was something that I've always was interested in. And so I pursued my business degree, and that's at least that was my desire. And the reason I have UC Berkeley, is anybody here from Berkeley? I don't know if anybody was here from Berkeley, but the reason I put Berkeley is because that was my dream school. That's where it was like I really wanted to go to Berkeley, and I had everything. I did everything right. I had good grades. I did community service, but the one thing I lacked was my SAT. My score was not high enough. I got everything I needed, and so I got disappointed that I didn't get into UC Berkeley. However, because I was part of programs like MESA, even though it was called Academy of Finance back then because it was focused on business, my counselor said, hey, it's okay. There might be other opportunities for you to go to other schools because you're a well-rounded student and you've overcome so many obstacles. Number one, I'm first gen graduate of my whole family. I come from a family of six. I'm the second youngest. So you could just imagine navigating the conversation with your mom or your dad about like, what does college mean? And so I was so excited. I got to the University of Penn. I got admitted and I got early admission. But my challenge was I was still under 18. And guess who needed to sign my documents? It wasn't me. I couldn't self-advocate for myself. It was my mother. And guess what? Being in a familia when you're the second youngest, nobody knows where even University of Penn is, leaving you out of the state. My mom didn't approve of me leaving. So I had to bypass a full scholarship to University of Penn. I was so disappointed, not only with my mom, but just in everything. I have been working hard. And I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, I have to lock in. I want to pursue higher education. So what's my next choice? And I had gotten all admitted to a bunch of other schools, but I said, okay, I have to be close to family because my mom is concerned about me, being on my own. And so I said, okay, let me go to CSUN. So I went to Cal State University CSUN, which was a great experience for me because it was specifically my degree in business, and I got a lot of opportunities there. But I wanted to share that because even though I had some challenges and some disappointments early in defining my pursuit of education, I still focused on my goal. And my goal was to pursue higher education, regardless of where it was going to be. And so I attended CSUN. My goal was to graduate in 4 years. Let me tell you about discipline. I said I want to do it in 4 years. I took night classes, I took summer classes, I took community college classes, even I was carrying a heavy load my freshman year. And because I wanted to pursue, because I knew financially I couldn't afford it either. But then I had another challenge. Well, not necessarily a challenge. I kind of see it more as a blessing. I Freshman year was very easy for me. Academically, the classes were easy. I was passing them and I started getting social. And this is where some of the vulnerability comes. I had a boyfriend and distractions happened. I got pregnant. I had a daughter on my second semester of my freshman year. So that created a whole different pathway for me. However, I locked in with discipline. I said, I am now being responsible. with my education, but now I have to respond to my own responsibilities and actions. So that didn't take me away from my goals. And so I wanted to share that very vulnerable because a lot of people tend to see that as a stereotype, as something that, you made a bad choice. I knew what I was doing, and it wasn't a consequence, it was a blessing for me because that even helped me locked in even more with discipline. I had to make sure I had a job, make sure I took care of my daughter, make sure I reached out for assistance and help, to make sure she was taken care of while I was going to school. So I really took away all the distractions I had and really locked in with discipline. And I'm proud to say I graduated within 4 years of college. And then another accomplishment was I got hired at the Boeing company. First of all, I didn't even know what the Boeing company was. I had to look it up. But let me tell you about the Boeing Company. The Boeing Company is a great organization. You all that are related to STEM. I advocate for that organization. It really helped develop me as a leader that I am today. They provide all the training, all the skills, and just the processes of the discipline of operational excellence. That you really get that at Boeing. And so I was excited because I was like, oh my God, I got my first corporate job in a big world brand. But now let's go to the next one. Now that I'm an employee, this is where I want to share this video about when you're a first employee somewhere, you have a mix of emotions, mix of experiences. You don't know it all. But I want to show you this particular McDonald's commercial that was done a few years ago because it really goes to show the culture, the support that helps you get there to your first step. So if we can play that. Oh, we can't hear the sound. You might take it off the. And so as you're watching this video, I want you to think about if you remember your first job, how did it feel? And what did you learn from it? So once we get it out, we'll be able to share it.
Hey, good morning, man. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm David.
Gabriel.
There we go. Okay, it's your first customer. Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?
Is Gabriel there?
It's for you.
Gabriel? Gabriel, ¿eres tú?
Welcome to McDonald's.
Hijo, it's us!
Tell him who us
He
is.
knows who us. No, he doesn't. We could be anybody. Who else is gonna drive up the ticket?
I'm so sorry.
Mijo, it's us!
It's us, mijo.
Yeah, I still think it's fake.
Hey, what can I get you guys to eat?
Gabriel, can you make me a Big Mac?
Oh, and papitas. Don't forget the papitas.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, I'll see you at the next window.
Ahora sí. Thank you.
How we doing,
Bye.
man?
Bye, sir.
It's okay. Mine took video.
So let me ask you, can you relate to that? Whether it was your first job. In many of our communities, right? Our parents are proud of us. Our friends are proud of our accomplishment, even if they're small, and they want to share that with us. So I wanted to share this because this is exactly how I felt. I was like, oh, I landed a great job at the Boeing company. And I felt like, okay, I don't know it all, but at least I have my support system. And typically, your support system starts with your family or your friends or your close people that you rely on when you need them. So I wanted to share a little bit of positivity that we're not all knowing the skills or things that are expected of us, but there are people along the way that are going to help you. So your first job. Anybody want to share a little bit about what they thought about that video? Oh, you're eating McDonald's right now. Good. Yeah, 14. McDonald's typically tends to be almost a lot of teenagers' first job or retail, right? And you sure get to learn a lot how to deal with people, what's expected of you, but at the same time, it helps you feel like a little bit ownership that you can do this and build your confidence. So good. All right, so now let's talk about leveling up. So now I'm at the Boeing company, right? So before I go to how to level up, let's find it. What does leveling up mean? It really means it's a mechanism for us to improve ourselves, to advance our skills, to advance our knowledge, it could be your physical appearance, it could be your economic status, it could be many different things depending on what it is that you want to level up to. Gen Z uses this. It really started with gaming. So any gamers on here? Usually, remember Super Mario Brothers and all these other new games? Leveling up was like, okay, you pass one level, you go to the next level. Well, that's where this concept originated. And even though Gen Z wants to take credit for it, I'm going to go ahead and take credit for it from my generation because it really started with gaming, how you level up. But really, it's about how do we make progress? How do we improve ourselves, right? And a lot of that has to take with your mindset. Can we really focus on our mindset? Can we control our emotions? Can we control our actions? And then if let's say there's actions where you need to learn a lesson, that's okay, but can you reflect? So I'm going to ask you, how do you level up right now, wherever you are today? How do you lock in and level up? If you want to put it on the chat, maybe one or two things. Anybody? Be aware of your strengths and weaknesses. Volunteerism, that's a good way. Good. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Thank you for participating. Continuous learning. So, leveling up is really, again, turning into your strengths. Your weaknesses are opportunities for strengthening. And you may be a student now thinking about, okay, so I have a lot of homework. How do I improve my grades? I need to study. Leveling up is about you being able to translate that in actual take actions. Are you really taking ownership and taking appropriate actions to level yourself up? Because nobody else is going to do that for you. You're responsible for it. You may need some help, and that's okay. You can ask for help to help you level up. Sometimes other people, outside people, even being here today, is a way for you to level up. You're learning about different concepts. You're beginning to invest in your own growth, in your own professional, in your career aspirations by learning from others. But what I want to focus on is that leveling up doesn't stop in college, or university or your education. It's going to go throughout your whole life as a professional, as a parent, as a family member, as a cousin, whatever. You're going to encounter opportunities where you're going to get challenged. But the more you become aware of who you are, setting your boundaries, ensuring that you're disciplined on where you want to go, you begin to build confidence. And that's a key attribute to have. Building your concept, your confidence with a growth mindset, but then it really enables you to be flexible, to be adaptable, and to really build some resilience. So the goal is, it doesn't matter how slow you go, as long as you don't stop and you achieve yourself, because life does happen. And so on my next slide, I'm going to share a little bit about what life happened to me. So as a professional, I'm at the company growing and training and so forth. But then life happened. You begin to feel like, hey, there's not people like me here that look like me. Or you begin to feel like, am I being tokenized because I'm the only Latina, the only female, maybe the youngest in the room, or maybe I'm the only not engineer here. You're going to experience stereotypes. It's unfortunate. Life, outside is still going to have some stereotypes, and people are going to have jokes. Unfortunately, there's unprofessional people in the workplace that you're going to encounter. But how you navigate and how you respond to that is what's going to help you continue to be successful. A couple of my challenges for me was, and I'm going to talk towards my work at Amazon Web Services. So when I left the Boeing company, I was given an opportunity to basically help Amazon Web Services, which is like the biggest, software piece of the company. And they wanted to hire, the goal Bezos had was by 2020, we had to hire 1 million people. Particularly for AWS, we were going to hire 10,000 people in a year. I got tasked to be part of their recruiting efforts globally. So I got to manage about 38 countries. I was recruiting around the globe from the US. I relocated myself to Seattle with my son. We went from Arizona. So at that time, I was in Arizona on a temporary assignment with Boeing. I completed that assignment and then I got this opportunity. What I thought was going to be a great career opportunity for me to go because I wanted to get more into the international. Everything looked great on paper. I got the salary boost. I got the resources I needed. They relocated me, and it was just me and my son this time because my daughter had just left to college. Come to find out, I began to experience some hard truth about whether this was a place for me. Meaning, I miss my family. I wanted to come back to California. I did not like the weather. My son was struggling in school because he didn't really have any friends. Um, and we were like living like maybe about 40 minutes from, downtown Seattle because that was the only way where we can afford or live similar to California. And then I started managing or becoming aware that my mom was getting older and she was having more medical conditions and difficulties, but nobody was really here to kind of help her here at home. And so, on top of that, some of my family members got laid off. So, guess who they were asking for help? They were asking me, can you help us financially? I'm like, I'm barely making it, here in Seattle. And so, life did happen. And those are challenges that you're probably maybe experiencing today or will experience in the future. And so, how do you help yourself continue to level up when that reality hits you? That life is making you go in different directions or is pulling you in so many different directions. And I'll tell you what I did. I seeked for help. I went and, I took care of my health because I was beginning to have some health issues. I seek some mental health as well to manage all this because it was very overwhelming. But then I also started really reflecting, is this the place that I want to be for me and my family? And I made a hard decision. I decided that I needed to go back home, meaning I needed to come back to California. And so that's what I did. I decided to finish my assignment at AWS to hire that many kids I had to, many employees I had to hire around the world. I was working almost 24/7 because, meaning Fridays, even through Sunday, because I was working with Korea, I was working with Australia, I was working with so many different countries, and all the time zones were different. But I decided that leveling up was a great opportunity at Amazon, but overall, it was not a great for me as someone that wanted to have a life balance. And so, one question I ask of you is, how are you leveling up when some challenges come, or when you have been pulled away in so many directions? You have a final, you have a family requesting, or maybe you're having some financial, difficulties. What have you done to help you get through that? Anybody want to share on the chat? That's okay if you're not comfortable sharing. Yep. You go back to your community, to your network. And I'm a big believer of mentoring. This is why I do these kind of sessions or these kind of, events and activities because I feel that sometimes I learn from other people's experiences to help me navigate. And having a mentor or just someone to talk to that you trust that is also going to help you in whether just listening to you or giving you a different perspective or a different strategy to try, don't be embarrassed to ask for help. I have asked for help when I need it, and I am not ashamed of it. So, there are programs out there, for people, whether it's housing, whether it's, food assistance, which we'll get to the next slide. I wanted to share with you. Um, but that's just one of that. So before we go on to the video, um, I share all this because, many of us, we already come maybe from communities where we're already having so many challenges. Maybe we have the lack of support, or we may not have financial, economic, ways to, help our families, or sometimes we just are just limited in resources. or we are in a community that is so suppressed that there's so much negativity that happens. But what I want to reassure you is that as you level up, some of these areas are going to show up in adulthood, and how you respond is what's going to help you. And so I wanted to kind of share this video because this video talks about the conversations we may be having when we were children or younger. They're going to show up in adulthood, either in spaces of work, in your community, or even in spaces that you're involved in. And so I want to show you this video so you can see some of those stereotypes or how people perceive us externally sometimes, but how we can build resilience so that those things don't impact us moving forward. So go ahead
Who
and play
said
the
that?
video.
The lady at the store.
That is not a compliment.
It's an ugly, nasty word, and you are going to hear it. Nothing I can do about that. But you are not going to let that word hurt you.
You got your ID?
Yeah.
Okay, so stop it. Now, when you get pulled over,
I'm a good driver. Okay?
baby,
Don't worry.
this is not about you getting a ticket. This is about you not coming home.
I'm gonna be okay. Right? Okay.
You are not pretty for a black girl. You are beautiful, period. Okay? Don't ever forget that.
So what I wanted to do is let you know that there's biases out there, and they're not going to go away. Each of us have biases, and it's how we respond to them that is going to help us to adapt or ignore them and continue our path forward. And so the next video I want to show you is
Who said that?
before we play the next
The
video.
lady at
Before we play it, don't play it out. Before we play, I want to share, obviously, all of us went through the pandemic. There was just so many challenges that arose from that in every community, in every parts of our life, even myself. I actually had just relocated from Seattle to California, and I took a break because I said I need to go back and reflect on what is it that I want to do next. What is my next move? Do I want to create my own business? Do I want to go back to corporate America? Or do I want to pursue a different role in public service? At that time, as you all know, we all experienced even more injustices, and they were more visible, not only through the pandemic, but also we were watching it on TV. We were seeing all these injustices that came across the street. But one of the things that I do recall is that because of all this being so present and relevant, there were companies that they really stepped up to help our communities. And even though we have these challenges that made of arise by, historical, mechanisms that were not meant for us, there are still other organizations out there that want to do good. And this is a prime example of a particular brand that stepped up not only for the community, but for a particular community by being innovative in their products and services. So if we could play the video, please.
For transgender people, a secure payment doesn't mean protecting yourself from someone buying sneakers with your card. No, if you're transgender, a secure payment means paying for something without being judged, questioned, disrespected, humiliated, harassed, even assaulted, simply because the name on your card doesn't match how you identify. This is about more than just keeping a card safe. It's about keeping us safe. True Name by MasterCard, the first card that allows you to display your chosen name because that's who you truly are.
Thank you. And I wanted to show that video too because you're all in the STEM fields or whatever it is that you're pursuing. There's going to be ways to create innovative solutions, not only for a particular product, for a particular service, but overall for humanity. And this is exactly what MasterCard did. And so I hope that this will, I have this quote here that said, you're going to encounter so many defeats in life, but make sure you feel that you're not defeated. And that network of you locking in with your discipline, leveling up with, turning, to resources or mentors or your community is really what really got us through COVID. I mean, there's still a lot of, post-COVID issues that we're dealing with. And because of that, I chose to be in public service now. So we'll talk a little bit about, building that resilience. So if we can go to the next slide. So I want to just give you a couple of, food for thought on how you build your resilience. I know that you've been on this journey with Mesa about how do you manage multiple priorities? How do you prioritize yourself and take care of yourself? And so I wanted to let you know that it doesn't matter how fast or slow you go. At the end of the day, building your resilience starts with you. How confident are you in ensuring that you're adapting to change? How you recover from those challenges and just keep going. I never gave up and I still don't give up. If somebody says no to me, I go back and say, okay, well, help me understand how this can be no. And, is there a way for us to stop a solution, particularly now in my role as, various, hats that I wear here at CPUC. I always go back to, yes, there's a lot of systems that were not built in government for our community. And so how can we be disruptive? How can we be creative to change that? And one of the things that I've been happy to do is number one, there is, in case you're not familiar, but the California Public Utilities Commission, we regulate gas companies, water, all the essentials, gas, water, electricity, communications, broadband. And I've had the privilege now to be serving now for about 18 months now. And there's a lot of programs out there for, families or people with low income or fixed income. If you're having issues on how to pay your, electricity, if you have issues on, you can't meet, your gas bill or water or whatever that may be, transportation, or even broadband, my commission that I work for, we regulate those companies, but we also have programs available. And so I really try to communicate these resources to my communities because many people don't know that they're available. So I go to a lot of community events with a lot of the commissioners, with some of the executives, and any opportunity I have to share, I say, here's a way for us to help each other and build resiliency within our community. And if you're a student or if you're a family that needs help, seek it. There is plenty of opportunities out there for you. And so one of the things about building resilience is that the next level of your career, your life is going to require a different version of you. And that's what I have learned, that I've been in private companies, I've been in nonprofits, I've been in different places, building my skills, my education, and continual life learner. And I always feel like I grow. And as I'm growing even older, I become even better at certain things, or there's still things I have to learn. And so on the next slide, I want you to do an exercise. But before we do this exercise, I want you to think about what does it mean to reflect? Reflection is a mechanism that I use quite a bit for myself. I even use it with my teams. Let's reflect on our successes, or let's reflect on what we learned from this particular initiative, from this particular deliverable. Even personally, my son, he's now 15. He wants to pursue baseball as an athlete. And so I'm beginning to learn like, okay, well, what is it going to take for him to get there? What do I need to do now to help him get there? So I have to reflect a lot on like, do I have the capacity to do that? Does he have, opportunities that I can bring to him to help him be accountable if that's the pathway that he wants to take? I also, like, for example, I also think about, I go back to what have I learned from all these different career paths. It was not a straight line for me. I was going up very quickly at the Boeing company. I obviously went to Amazon and my career has progressed, but I've also had to step back a little bit and say no to a lot of things. I'm very intentional of what I commit myself to now because I want to be able to balance. I also want to be taking care of myself. I want to make sure I eat well. I want to make sure that I stay active. And sometimes I will seek out counseling myself, because sometimes we need to talk to other people. And I also try to celebrate my wins. One of the ways I celebrate my wins, so when I graduated high school, graduated college, I didn't have a car, but because I was making okay money at the Boeing company, I bought myself a car. And I felt proud of it because I was like, that's how I wanted to recognize myself. But I also because I needed a car to transport me to places. Small wins could be, I'll tell you, my work right now as an equal employment opportunity officer, I am responsible for investigating harassment, discrimination, or retaliation cases. And some of those can sometimes really just take a lot of my time. But when I finish a case, I always make time for myself. And I either go get me a massage, I either have me a glass of wine, or I sometimes go for a walk. And so reflecting on what you do in life, I think is something to always have as a mechanism to really help you lock in and level up. And so on the next slide, what I'd like for you to do is think about, if you go to the next one, think about in the last week, what is one achievement you've had and what is one challenge? And if you're willing to share, we would like to open it so that we can help you navigate if you would like us to provide you some insights. You can either put it on your chat or if you want to go off mute. Anyone? If not, it's okay. Just write it down because small wins are always a good way to celebrate because it's progress. Let's see. So you have a retirement. Oh, a retirement job that you're looking for. Good. Well, congratulations. That's a lot of tenure. I stayed at the Boeing company for about 15 years. I started as an intern and grew my career there. One of my biggest successes this week for me is I had a very tough week with a particular group of employees. And I've learned that, sometimes people are not going to change, and that's okay. You can give them as much guidance, and I'm okay with that. And my biggest achievement is that I'm not going to let all that noise affect me to continue to lead my team where it needs to go. So that is one of my big achievements for this week. And I'm going to go celebrate because my daughter got us tickets to go to the Grand Prix in Long Beach later this afternoon. So I will enjoy the rest of my weekend. Well, I'll start my weekend with that. Let's see, anybody else is you completed your engineering project. I'm sure, are you guys in finals? I'm sure you're probably in finals or doing your various projects. So that's good. Yes, you have to lock in and block those distractions. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And somebody raised their hand. Mimi? I don't know if you can unmute her. Yeah, there you go.
Hello. It's
Hi.
Hi. I think one achievement was definitely fixing one of our cars to get to school. It's about an hour and a half to get to class. So that was huge, and it's the one with AC. So
Oh,
awesome.
awesome.
I guess the challenge would be among all of them, right? But it would be fixing the other car so we can do more things.
Also, that's a good one. But hey, it's a necessity, right? So take priority in getting to A, and B, and then little by little you get that second, right? Good. That's a good one. Thank you for sharing. All right, so let's go on to the next slide. I think we're almost getting to the closing. So here's some just actions and recommendations that I have to share with you all today. You may have others that you want to share or want to write down, but at the end of the day, I want you to take ownership. Nobody owns your career but yourself, and always seek others to help you in that journey because we don't become successful alone. This is not like a one person, this really requires, your family, your friends, your community, these kind of resources, these kind of networks to help you continue to lock in and level up. And so take a minute and just write down one action that you would like to take in for the next, end of semester. What do you need to do to really lock in with discipline and level up so that you can turn whatever challenge it is that you're facing to a strength? And in that journey, celebrate those small wins. Go get yourself a Starbucks or, your McDonald's or whatever. Just, celebrate yourself because it is hard work. It's not easy, but I don't want you to give up. I want you to continue. There is a lot of resources out there to help you. But you got to be able to tell us what you need. So, next slide. Check out CPUC, yes, for retirement jobs. We definitely do have a lot of different engineers that we hire. So lots of opportunities. As a matter of fact, I have an internship position open too. So I don't know if you know what, I forgot to add the link, but I'll send you the link. I am currently looking for an intern for this summer, or even to start as soon as possible to help me with some of our inclusion efforts here internally at CPUC. I also have another one that I'm going to be collaborating. So anybody that's involved with tribal communities, indigenous communities, we're also hiring an intern for that at the state. But we have tons of internship opportunities at CPUC, whether you want to be a safety engineer, whether you want to be a train inspector, just energy. I mean, there's all kinds of internship opportunities. So definitely this is a time to look into them. And for you who is looking for full-time positions, we also have full-time positions. Or feel free to reach out to me and let me know which one you're interested in, and I can refer you. All right, so with that, let's close it out because I know we're coming at time, and I want to allow for any questions or anything else. So in summary, really locking in means about taking control over your mindset, and leveling up is really about your outcome. If you stay consistent with your choices and the conversations you engage in, decisions that really shape you on where you want to go, I think that you can definitely create a great pathway of success for yourself, but for others, and hopefully, ultimately, you reach your goals. And so, this last video I want to show you is about joy. Life is about, being resilient, but also locking in, leveling up, and at the same time, celebrate those around you. So, if you want to play that video.
If you think you know what happens next, ask yourself why. These are the black stories we've been shown. A narrow view that limits our understanding. But there's so much more to see. Of black life. Let's widen the screen so we can widen our view.
So be open to different perspectives, different ideas. So definitely Just to sum it up, if we can go to the next slide. And I want to leave you with this quote. So remember, it's our responsibility, right, to really put the time and effort of where we want to go. So like they said, every rep, every hour, every choice you make, it can compound to an epic win. So thank you for having me. Hopefully, you enjoyed today's presentation, and I'll open it for any comments or questions that you might have for me.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for all your words of wisdom and encouragement and inspiration. You got us
I
going
think
with those videos.
and I wanted
Um,
to show, I think we have a question.
oh yeah, yeah, of
I think I
course.
saw a hand somewhere on here.
Oh, Mimi. Go ahead, Mimi.
Sorry, everything's like moving here, so I don't know which one's
So
ours.
sorry about that. I also
No worries.
realized that there's a lot of noise in my background. But what really resonated with me is the challenge you had at the time hearing about your I believe it was your mom's, one of your parents' medical conditions. As a caregiver myself, I've been caregiving for my father for a long time.
Mm.
Um, and then now recently, my mom needs help. That's been a great challenge, but what are some things that helped you kind of lock in on um, or focus in on what your goal was at that time? My goal right now is graduating and landing a good career for them. And if anyone can chime in on that, I'd greatly appreciate.
Well, great. Thank you for that question. Maybe this is actually so timely for me because I was in a different state, right? Managing like my mom's healthcare. I really had to look at the local resources where my mom lived because she was also getting unhoused. One of the developers came in and gentrified the community and took over her building, so she was also being asked to move. I advocated for my mom so much where I called HACLA, meaning the housing authority. I called everywhere I could around here in the LA County area to find out the resources. So as a caregiver, a couple of things that are available. There is in-home care services for your parents or for your aging or anybody that needs. That is part of a state program that is funded. So if you need information about that, or if I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but it's called in-home services that's provided depending on what type of health condition they have. But it's available for people like us who are caregivers, and we also have other responsibilities. So definitely encourage you to look into the in-home care services. In addition to that, depending on their age, depending on what kind of medical health coverage they have, sometimes they have additional resources that you can reach out to. One of the things that and I'm not sure if you have other family members that can support, but I called a meeting with all my brothers and sisters and I said, look, I'm out of state. I need somebody to kind of help in the interim until I find somebody that can help at home with mom. And we all pitched in. A couple of days my brother went, a couple other days my sister went. And, we did grocery shopping for her. And we eventually sometimes had to cook and leave, meals just for her to warm up. So I think it is challenging to be a caregiver, but I went and did my research and went and asked for help. And there is plenty of resources out there so that they can support you as well. I think even now today, I all of a sudden had an unexpected additional member in my home that came in, autistic, and had never had any services. So I went through the regional services organization, and now he's in a full day program where he gets picked up. He does, his whatever daycare activities they have, and they do field trips. And now he's building more of his own independence as an adult, and to the point that the program has helped him kind of get a part-time job. So seek resources if there's something in particular that you're looking for. I don't know exactly what area you're in, but maybe we can connect offline and we can kind of explore some of those. Hopefully that helps you. And then for you, stay focused on you because if you're not good, how are you going to be able to provide for others? And that was one of the things that I did in college. I said, I got to do this. And I had to sometimes couldn't be at family functions, or sometimes I just couldn't. I had to make that choice. Right now, I'm focused on me because now it's about my education and providing for my daughter. So to stay focused, reach out if you need help, and there's resources out there for you. Hopefully that helps you. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Thank you.
All right. Danielle,
So,
Marvin?
yes, thank you. Thank you very, very much. This was great. This was great. And it's recorded. We're going to post this to Mesa Space. I want to give a quick pitch for the next two sessions that we're going to have. There's two more that we'll have this spring. So next week is Pitch Perfect. It's design skills every STEM person needs. So this will help you with if you're doing a pitch for a project or a poster board or anything like that. That sign up for that. And the following week we'll have Unlock Your Next Step. It is navigating the transfer journey. So if there are any community college students who are, looking for tips and support, we're going to have a panel about that. So I want to, again, thank you, Nancy, and we are going to close out.
Well, thank you for having me again and again. Feel free to reach out via LinkedIn, or whatever else you need.